if you ask me the best way to learn to throw these tightline rigs, whether it's streamers or nymphs, I always tell people learn to cast dries because it's that 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, the good acceleration between 10 and 2 and the nice crisp hard stops at 10 and 2 that for me makes my casting style anyway, makes it work. And so that's again why I like a 20-pound butt section as opposed to a 10-pound butt section.
That was Domenick Swentosky breaking down his monorig for streamers. We get a new take on an old topic today on the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today. We'll help you on your fly fishing journey with classic stories covering steelhead fishing, fly tying, and much more.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Thanks for stopping by the Fly Fishing Show. I have launched a brand new podcast called Outdoors Online, the marketing podcast that helps you grow your brand online. I'm interviewing some of the biggest internet marketers on the planet to share what's working now in social media and online marketing. Head over to outdoorsonline.co and listen to the current show that just came out, I think, this week. Domenick Swentosky is on to break down the story of how he grew the Troutbitten blog into one of the great resources online. We find out why he doesn't fish huge streamers, how he crosses over the monorig to streamers, and why George Daniel has had a big influence on him. A quick word from our sponsor. GotFishing.com is your trusted source of information with access to the world's best fishing trips. You'll never pay a dime extra for the trip you book, and in many cases, less than advertised. Find out where Got Fishing could take you by heading over to GotFishing.com today. That's GOTFishing.com, or reach them by phone at 208-630-3373. GotFishing.com, the easiest place to start your next fishing adventure. So without further ado, here's Domenick Swentosky from Troutbitten.com. How's it going, Dominic?
Great, Dave. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah. We were just off air chatting a little about the Dominic versus Dominique. So I got it right. You're
right.
Yeah.
Right. I don't care how you pronounce the last name, but yeah, that first name, it's
exactly.
It's Dominic. Yeah.
Well, let's jump into it. I want to dig into. I just had Rich Strolls on recently, and we've had a lot of streamers. It seems like whenever the streamer game, we're talking about streamers, it's always big. It's always like 6-inch, gigantic, enormous.
Right.
And your take on it is a little bit different. So I want to jump into streamers here. But before we get there, can you just talk about how you first got into fly fishing and all the fly tying?
So I grew up trout fishing, Western PA, mostly for stock trout. My uncle taught me a lot about reading water. Fished with my dad and my uncle a lot. And I always just wished the trout season was longer. Like I say, it was mostly for stocked fish. So, and I'm thankful that that opportunity was there. But I'd say that once I really got my driver's license, around 16 years old, yep. That's where my parents gave me some freedom right away and, gave me the keys to the car. And I started driving over to Central PA, which is where I live now. And that's about the time, 16, 17 is where I really started picking up a fly rod. And then eventually late teens kind of broke away from the bait fishing. Because what we did when I was growing up was mostly strung minnows, sometimes redworms. And to be honest, I'd probably still bait fish if I thought I'd catch more trout on bait. But what really attracted me to the fly rod was that you could do anything, meet the trout on their terms. So yeah, late teens. And then I went to Penn State in 1993 out of high school. Mm-hmm. And, Central PA, wild trout, limestone streams. And so I've been here. I actually finished school at IUP. So I moved back home, finished school. And then I came right back here, met my wife, and it was an easy decision where we wanted to live. So, we were close enough to both of our families, and we've made a life here, and we're never leaving. People will tell me, "Hey, you're lucky to live there. You're so lucky." But really, I've made life choices around good trout fishing.
That's cool. Is that what makes it? Pennsylvania. Obviously, I've had Joe Humphries on and a bunch of
nice.
Really amazing people, and Pennsylvania keeps coming back. When I think of hot spots in the U.S., it's Pennsylvania, it's Colorado, and I don't know what else you add to it, but those things seem like they're there. Why is it, from your perspective, why is PA so special?
This is Jay Nichols' theory. I was talking to him, and Jay Nichols said that he thinks it has a lot to do with the hunting culture here as well. A lot of, like, I know Joe Humphries hunts, and I don't know, a lot of my good fishing friends that are good anglers also hunt. And I think if you take those hunting principles over, they convert nicely into trout fishing. And then it's not just the hunting principles, but just be an outdoorsman. But Jay said that. I thought that was a really good theory. I mean, I've always just figured, the waters are just so prime here. And here's the real thing. It's you can fish here year round. My buddy Matt Grobe now lives out in Montana, and he and I used to fish around here a lot together. And when he was moving out there for a job, right out in Bozeman, right in the other mecca of trout fishing, I said, what you're really going to miss is the year-round fishing. And he gets it done. He still actually fishes all winter long, fishes some tailwaters, fishes some spring creeks. And he'll go out there when it's, single digits. But it's a struggle. It's more of a struggle than it is here. I mean, right here, you can fish 12 months out of the year. There's really, and so that's the biggest thing I would say why there's, I don't know, so much talent, let's say, that's come out of this area. Ed Shank recently died, and he was from here as well. I still use the Shank's white minnow. I like simple patterns a lot of times.
Nice. Well, we're going to dig in fully to the patterns and fly tying. We are kind of in a fly tying season. I try to break things up seasonally to help focus some of the content. And so we're going to get into that. I did want to talk because Troutbitten is a big thing. It's a big name out there. Can you talk about bring us from where you were at as a teen, and then how did you start Troutbitten, and talk about what that site's about?
Yeah. First, I think it's kind of neat that you said it's kind of a big thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that is, it's grown very organically. Much of it has been a surprise to me. It's nothing I planned on, but yeah, it's grown, and a lot of people are reading it, and you can see that by the numbers. I mean, the traffic it's a lot. It gets 1.5 million page views a year. There's almost 50,000 unique viewers per month. And those are stats that like the ad guys care about and stuff like that. But I mean, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
And it's a very targeted, let's say, targeted site. I mean, it's trout fishing on a fly rod, but it's rivers. Like, I don't know Stillwater, so I don't write about Stillwater. I do almost all the writing myself. There's some articles back there. So there's some old articles where some of my best fishing buddies were also writing a few things. But anyway, 2014 Troutbitten started really with a group of about 10 of us, real good fishing friends, local and some guys out of the area, some guys from Eastern PA, some guys from Western PA. 10 of us were in a, like a group email, really.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, that's not going to work. So, I mean, there are a lot of great ideas there. And so it just bounced it over to created a forum, a message board. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And my buddy Sloop actually put the message board up there and called it Troutbitten. And that term, that word comes from a Joe Humphries book where he says that he was a trout-bitten kid and blah, blah, blah. So that forum, I mean, it was a private forum, just invites. Mostly it was 10 guys.
Yeah.
And, I was always the one who would really expand on the stream reports. I'd make them into stories. I've always written a lot. My mom can show you things that I wrote when I was in like 5th grade. I thought was a big deal, for 5th grade, maybe they weren't bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've always really enjoyed writing. It's the creativity, any chance to be creative, even with a fly rod in my hand, but any chance to be creative, I love. I was a musician for 17 years. So,
wow.
So expanding on all those stories, and trying to always drag out of the rest of the guys on that forum the tactics, the things that they were doing, because they're good fishermen. It was a good group of guys, talented guys coming from different angles, ways of fishing. And so I'd always try to drag out of them on the forum, hey, how are you fishing? Tell us more. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of sharing of ideas and a lot of dialing stuff in. That was also at the end of, that was right as my kids were starting to be born. I got 2 boys. Mm-hmm. And so basically 2003 to 2009, I fished during the day, 5 days a week, year round, and I played music at night. And then when my kids were born, then I was daytime dad, so a lot of that fishing time was taken away, but I'd still take the boys down to the creek and stuff like that. So anyway, that all, those 6 years of just fishing almost every day. Well, 5 days a week.
Yep.
That's sort of correlated then with, I had a lot of stories to tell, right? So I put them on that forum, and the guys were always, they liked the stories, and they always said, boy, you should start a blog. I had no desire to do that. I was happy enough sharing it with 10 people, 10 other guys. And then my buddy Pat was really the one who said, man, you got to do this. I said, well, I'll do it if you do it with me. So Pat wrote with me for a year, for that first year. And then after that, it's funny. It was January, after the blog had been up for about 12, 13, 14 months. And he texted me one day and he said, I don't want to write for Troutbitten anymore. And I was kind of disappointed, And we were real good fishing buddies, and this was cool to be writing these stories and tactics and stuff, doing this venture together. It was pretty cool. And I said, okay, you don't want to write anymore, but why, And he goes, well, I just wrote an article. It's Saturday. I just wrote an article. It took me like 5 hours, and I could have been out fishing.
Yep, that's right.
I said, I get it. And so, for me, being a writer, and that's what I went to school for. I was an English major, philosophy minor. Being a writer, like I said, I love that creativity. I honestly get just almost as much enjoyment, or a different kind of satisfaction, enjoyment, almost as much out of writing as I do fishing. And I love it.
That's cool.
So 2014, 15, 16, it was just writing articles. There was nothing. Then I got some offers to put some ads on the site, because again, it's a very targeted market. It's just, if you want to reach fly fishers for trout in rivers, mostly wild trout, right here, that's a good place to do it.
That's awesome. I had another big person I had on, which was really amazing, was John Gierach, and I asked him in that conversation about writing, and I can't remember how it came, but it was basically, are you a writer or a fisherman first? And John said he was a writer, and it disappointed people, when he said that. But for you, are you exactly? Yeah. Are you a writer or are you a fisherman first?
Fisherman.
There you go.
Well, boy, it's close.
Yeah.
I do think the best. My favorite writers, I guess, are the ones you can tell they're good fishermen, and yet they're also good writers. And you can also kind of tell when you're reading some things that this guy's a better writer than a fisherman.
Oh yeah. What do you think? What do you think makes a great writer? You think about Gierach, you think about some of these really amazing. I just interviewed, actually, the podcast that came out this week was John Deach, who is the River Runs Through It, right? Norman McLean, and he was the stunt guy for Brad Pitt. Yeah. But we talked a lot about Norman McLean, you know what I mean? Because the writings was amazing. And so what's your take? What's the difference between a great writer and just your so-so kind of nothing special?
Well, yeah, I think you got to write from experience. You can't be making too much stuff up.
Yeah.
Although my buddy Steve, when Troutbitten turned into a career around 2017, and he said to me, "Don't you think you'll ever run out of material?" And I said, "No, not really, because because I can always make stuff up too, Steve. And as far as like the stories, that's true. I just finished a story, if you want to call it that, about why we wade. That's what it's just called We Wade.
Yeah.
And it'll publish in a couple days. But, that's the kind of thing I can write forever. And, the tactics stuff, I get that. That'll probably dry up at some point. But, man, I feel like I I could write for 10 or 15 years.
Yeah.
Writing twice a week, and the truth is, as I keep fishing, the ideas about the tactics, those keep changing,
Yeah.
Which is why I also really love this format, because I'll go back and change things.
Exactly.
And when I update, I almost always put some kind of notice there, like, hey, updated, May 2020 or whatever. But, obviously you can't do that in a book. Once it's out there, it's down, that's it. And I mean, I've talked to guys who have, stuff published and that everybody reads, and they go, man, I kind of do stuff different now. Like their leader formula changes.
Mm-hmm.
The more you fish, man, I mean, the more you figure stuff out and your preferences change. But yeah, I'd say you really got to, that's where it starts. You got to write what you know.
Yeah.
And hopefully if you're writing fishing, you have a lot of experience. Like I said about those 6 years, I mean, I've fished a lot through the rest of my life too, but that's the main difference really, I'd say, between me and the next guy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe anybody's really born with innate fishing talent. I think that it's just that it's time on the water. It's caring about what you're doing, trying to get better all the time, being willing to explore and that kind of thing. But it really comes back to that time. And over those, I mean, think about it, man, like 6 years,
yeah, it's
5 days a week.
That's a lot of days.
Yeah. And like I said, around here, you could fish year round. So I fished through August. I fished through January. And that, I just explored these waters from bottom to top.
That's cool.
So
that's cool.
It's the time. And then
that's it. Just like anything, writing, you've got to be a good writer, you've got to write, right? You can't just, write every once in a while. You got to write. That's something I'm trying to, I'm going to try to force myself this year is to, just get more consistent and write every day, even if it sucks, just write something, right?
For sure. And that's what I did when I was a musician. I was a musician for 17 years, played like 5 gigs a week. And, I wrote and recorded a bunch of songs. And really, before my kids were born too, I held myself to this for about 2 years. I made sure I wrote a song a week. And, I wrote a lot of bad songs during that time. But I wrote some really good ones too. And like you say, if you just, you make a promise to yourself and hopefully you can hold yourself to it. That's what it is. It's like time on the water for fishing, but it's time, behind the keyboard or however you write. It's, I mean, there's 600 articles now on Troutbitten. And if I look back, like most weekends, I do what I call a weekend remix, where I'll pull something out from a couple years ago. Usually I update it, I'll rewrite some stuff, and then I'll repost it. But, when I go back and I bring some of that stuff up from 2015 or 2016, I go, whew,
yeah.
I need to polish this up.
That's good.
I've gotten a lot better at it,
That's good though. That's funny from a Google perspective, actually updating your content and your articles, they really like that. So I think you're helping yourself. Yeah,
right on. That's true. And like, that, I mean, SEO and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of, well, I mean, I think it's funny because I give a little plug to my new podcast show we have going. It's a online marketing podcast focused on serving, fly fishing and outdoor companies. And I've had a couple guests on there that actually one, Evo, who was on the first episode, he said it was all about SEO. But what he said bottom line was forget about SEO and techniques and tactics. He said, if you just write for a human something helpful, then Google will take it and they'll love it. And they'll, what I mean? That's basically the bottom line of that hour-long show.
That's great. That's great. I tell you, when I started Troutbitten, again, I had no plans of it becoming my career or anything. So, I wasn't digging into like what Google cares about and things like that and how to present things, for SEO scores. And I still only follow that a bit, but enough. Like now I care about it. I'll make sure there's a nice cover photo, in the dimensions that Google wants and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, well, what you said there. I think Google they just kind of found me, because, or however it works with the crawlers and whatnot.
Well, you know what they do, Dominic, is that, and Evo got into this a little bit, and I didn't even know this, right? But Obviously Google's a multi-billion, however much money they have, but they have the
Yeah.
computer algorithms which are working behind the scenes and stuff. But they also have thousands and thousands of normal, like human beings that are following up and seeing if their algorithm's right. So
Sure.
that's why the spammy stuff maybe works for a little bit, but eventually it gets kicked out because eventually a human finds it and they're like, no, this is not good, and they boot it out.
Yeah. Well, exactly. It's for me. It's that promise that I made to myself, just like I said about just not just writing, but especially like 2017 on, I promised myself I'd write, post twice a week. Usually it's 3 times a week if you also consider that remix, and then holding to that. So it's hopefully the quality. I think the quality's there when they're writing, and then but the consistency, and obviously Google likes that too. But it's not what Google likes. It's what the readers like, obviously, but. Yeah, it's the consistency. It's easy to start a blog, right? But then, as you know, it's the same with the podcast and whatever else you do. It's easy to do those first couple podcasts, blog posts, whatever. But then, a couple months later, well, again, like where you want to go fishing instead of writing, and it's harder to stick with anything really. But that's where if you love it, then it's not all that hard.
So yeah, I wanted to jump into and dig into the streamer game a little bit. I've had a number of streamer guests on, and Rich Strolls was probably the most recent one that I had on. Yeah. And from you, maybe you could just start with Kelly Gallop, since he's one of the biggest names in streamers, in the game. What did Kelly Gallop get wrong about streamers?
Oh.
Not to call out Kelly or anything like that, but just kind of playing on words a little bit or whatever.
Yeah, so nobody really gets anything wrong, but it probably works for him and doesn't work for me. Put it that way.
Yeah.
Is the real big stuff I just don't think you need streamers that big to even catch the biggest fish in a river. I mean, I have friends that fish the same waters that he's fishing out there, and I understand it. I've spoken to Kelly a couple times, well, through email and stuff like that. He's always very generous about information, knowledge. I don't need a fly bigger than like 3 inches. Hell, I probably don't even need that. Actually, if I wanted to go catch the biggest trout in the river, I'd probably focus on nymphing first, but with a big nymph. Think about this. I like a big nymph or a small streamer, like that kind of size.
Yeah.
Very targeted. I like a very targeted approach, and I'll just say like that size is like 1 to 2 inches, let's say. So like a big stonefly for a nymph, or I don't know, a smaller bugger, or 100 other patterns. 100 other patterns. So that's probably the main thing is I like to be very targeted. And like the big streamer thing, I love doing it. Yeah. Although I hardly ever go past like 4.5 inches. What's funny is, seriously, right before we got on this chat here, I actually emptied my streamer box. I only carry one streamer box, but there's way too many streamers in there.
Yeah.
And I emptied them all. And I do that, I don't know, at least once a year. Because I'll add stuff or people give me stuff, but I tie too many of this or that. And then there's some experimental patterns. Then I'm digging around and I can't find what I was really looking for. And then that was happening this morning. So I got home and I had a couple minutes, and I kind of just pulled everything out of the box and laid it on a big slab of wood. And I'll probably put about half of it away into a secondary box.
Yeah.
But I don't think pattern is nearly as important. Gallop talks a lot about color. I've watched his videos and even talked with him again, like through email. And I know he'll cycle right through those colors. For me, it's a waste of time. If they're not taking olive, I'm in trouble. Olive, I'll go to white, sometimes to black. I mean, I got other colors in my box, but it's like anything else. As soon as once I start digging into those patterns, like once I start using yellow or something with pink in it and this and that, it's a bad day anyway. They're not really eating streamers.
Right.
So that's another thing. It's like the idea of just going out there and trophy hunting and trying to fish for the biggest trout in the river. Like maybe I just don't have that in me. I mean, I've done it. I seriously did the Gallop thing, like, to a T for 10 months, almost a full year. Like no deviation. Did the color pattern changes, did all the all the patterns. I fished a lot of zoo cougars and circus peanuts and all that stuff. This a long time ago, like a decade or more. And I did it all. And I did it around here. And it worked, but I wasn't catching anything more. Well, wasn't catching bigger trout than I had been with a more targeted nymphing approach, or let's say a slower streamer approach. Not necessarily slower, but a more targeted, again, streamer approach. So does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, no, it does. I think that basically you're, Kelly's got a strategy that works, but there's a lot of different ways to fish, in your way. I mean, maybe you could just start off there with describing, maybe you could describe first, since we're talking about a little bit about fly tying, maybe your a favorite pattern of yours, one of your streamers that you do well on, and then talk about how you fish that in your local streams.
Sure. So you said Rich Strolls was on. He's fantastic. I think maybe at least within my top 3 flies still is the headbanger sculpin. Yeah. And that works really well for what I do. I'll say that in a minute. But I tie my headbangers a little bit smaller than what Rich does. Not by much. It's probably an inch shorter. They're 3.5, 4 inches. So I use, a smaller front hook and smaller back hook. I just tie them in olive. I know I could tie other colors, but if they don't take olive, I found that they're not going to take other colors. For me. Great pattern. And Pat, my buddy Pat, again, who was kind of started Troutbitten with me way back when. He's the one who really got onto that headbanger. And, I was like, it's probably not better than a woolly bugger, but it is. It's a good pattern. So I should mention that pretty much 80%, 90% of the time I fish a mono rig with streamers. I mean, it's a tight line rig, Euro nymphing rig, contact nymphing rig, whatever you want to call it. But I kind of set my mono rig up as a nymph rig, but then with the idea in mind that I'm going to be going over and fishing streamers with it too. So I like a butt section with some stiffness. Even my sighter section, I like to be a little bit stiffer than what you normally would have for nymphs and things like that. And when I'm throwing those nymphs on a mono rig, the reason I do it is because I have a very I have really great control over even head position. I can change the head position of those nymphs, of the streamer at any time. That's pretty cool. Yeah, because you're tight to it, and by tight I mean there's not extra line on the water.
No. How similar is this to say the Euro nymphing rig?
Real similar. Now, to me, Euro nymphing means you're fishing with nothing attached to the leader besides the flies. So you can't put split shot on there. If you were nymphing, Euro nymphing, you're never going to put an indicator like a suspender on there at all. You're not going to put a thingamabob or a yarn indie, anything like that. And so I call it a mono rig because that's what Joe Humphries called it. And there's like 80 articles on Troutbitten about the mono rig, and I don't want to go on and on about it.
No. Is there a good one you would point somebody to if they wanted to just see the whole thing, what it's about?
Yeah, sure. You can go up in the menu of Troutbitten, go under articles, and then you'll see the mono rig right under there. And there's a whole page of like all the mono rig articles in one place. And I grouped them like let's say the 5 most important ones, or the ones that get you started on the idea. It's very similar to what people call a Euro nymphing rig, but a Euro nymphing rig is very similar to what guys were calling high sticking.
Yeah, that's right.
There are differences. Like I put split shot right on. Honestly, so a lot of times I'll have something even like that headbanger. Let's say I got a headbanger on the point. Usually 2X. I have a sighter built in, so I got my butt section, a little transition or taper, then a sighter, which let's just say it's 12-pound amnesia. It could be a lot of things, and let's say it's a foot long. Then after that, I'll usually run 2X or 3X, depending on the size of streamers and how I'm fishing them. But then let's say there's a headbanger at the point, 6 feet beyond the sighter, and then I usually run a second streamer 20 inches or probably 2 feet up, and that second streamer will again like be an Ed Shanks white minnow, something I can see, because I think that a lot of people really try too hard to see their streamer in the water, and then you're making it ride too high, so that having that white point of sight, that streamer, that small streamer up above, gives me more of an opportunity more often to see something about what's going on. And, I can see the white one, and then I have a great idea of, let's say, where that headbanger is. But anyway, by fishing them on that mono rig like that, I may very well put split shot on, 6 inches up from the headbanger, even though the headbanger's heavy. If I'm fishing big heavy water, I still need to get down more, and I'm not fishing sinking lines because I like that targeted, focused approach. I find myself saying that a lot right now.
Are you targeting? Are you focusing and targeting when you get to the water? Are you looking and saying, "There's that little 2-foot section I want to hit," or even smaller? How are you finding the water, reading the water?
Yeah, I think 2 feet, like a 2 foot radius, 3 foot radius. That's a pretty good marker. It really depends though if I'm wading or I'm in a boat. I mean, there's a big difference. I throw a lot of bigger streamers and do more gallop style of like fast jerk strip and things like that. By the way, he probably hates being pigeonholed into like fast big streamers because he probably does a lot of different things.
Oh yeah.
But your whole gallop, make the fish chase it down, bigger streamer, faster retrieves. Let's say that's what people think of. I'll do that from a boat a lot. It's fun because if you're covering 8 miles of water in a day, let's say 8 miles or more, whatever, you show that fly to a lot of fish. Those flies, you show them to a lot of fish. So anyway, maybe my radius grows. Maybe it's more. Maybe I'm trying to hit every 4 feet on the bank, on the best spots. If the guy on the oars is good, he'll slow you down. You can get 2 or 3 targeted shots. But if I'm wading, which I usually am, our waters here, they're not big enough really to float. That's the only thing Central PA is really kind of missing is good floating water. But the rest of Pennsylvania has places you can go and float. But so mostly I'm wading around here, and back to like the 2 foot radius. Even if there's a really great pocket, I'll approach it from behind and then get make sure I get casts up above it. And of course the bank, it's always structure. The banks are a great target, but then there's plenty of in-stream structure, whether it be wood or big rocks and stuff like that. I like to hold that streamer on structure as long as possible, rather than what I see a lot of people do, throwing it at the structure and then stripping.
Yeah.
Usually those strips are taking it right away from the structure. And I get it. It can look like an escaping bait fish, and then the fish will hopefully chase it down. But back to sort of like my approach is to give the fish, more often, I like to give the fish something that's easier to eat, so they don't have to chase it down so much. I like to show them an easily available food form. I talk about that a lot. So maybe I try to make it look dead or dying more often, the imitation, and so it's available. So the trout goes, I'll eat that.
That's right.
And instead of going, I'm going to chase that down, I'm going to go grab it.
Exactly. Yeah, it seems like that strategy. I mean, you obviously both work, and you can see the fish from a fish's perspective, but the one of the making it easy for them just to chomp on it seems like if I was a fish, like if I had to choose between, because fish are lazy, right? I mean, would I rather chase something down and kill it, or would I rather just sit there and eat something that's kind of wounded and dying?
Right on. Yeah, and if you were a trout, you'd want to sit there and let the meal come to you more often. Like bass are much more aggressive. Obviously, muskie are real aggressive, but we got to be careful. I think that we don't take those kind of qualities over to trout, because trout really want you to bring the meal to them more often.
Hey, can you talk, Gary, in the Facebook group, Gary Kaywell had a question about getting flies to ride at the correct depth. How do you get them? Any tips there?
Right. So that's another reason why I love running a mono rig. In the mono rig, I have a sighter, which is, of course, piece of colored line in a 6 feet up, let's say, from the point streamer. It could be 8 or 10 feet up. 10 is really pushing it. I don't want to deal with 10 feet to tip it, but let's say 6 feet up. So with that sighter, I can then read on that sighter when that sighter slows down. There's so many different qualities to it, but let's say if I cast up and across toward the bank, and I let my streamer kind of sink for a second, but I get that contact, and I can read that contact on the sighter, and then I can see what speed the sighter is going. And when I see that the sighter is going slower than the top current, I know that something's making it slow down. And what's it connected to? The headbanger sculpin, let's say, down there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the strike zone down there. Let's say it's 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 inches deep from the bottom of the water, from the riverbed. And so now I know that my streamer is in a strike zone. And the reason I know it is because that sighter slowed down slower than the top current. These are all like nymphing principles, tight line nymphing principles, Euro nymphing principles, whatever, that I like to take over to the streamer game.
Mm-hmm. That's it. So you're kind of crossing over. I mean, really, somebody thinks about basic levels of streamers, casting out and just stripping back or whatever. I mean,
right.
you're kind of mixing things up, and it's this nymph mixed with streamers. Is that what you would say is the focus for what you do?
Yeah, the first thing you said there was that I'm kind of crossing over. I actually call it a crossover a lot of times. So, yeah, I mean, I've written a couple articles about that. You can check it out. I call it a crossover technique. It's half nymphing and half streamer fishing. And that's why. Because like I said, I will cast up and over, or just even almost straight up. Maybe I'll try to run the nymph through one current seam for a while, and then I'll start changing lanes, and I'll do a head flip, and I'll slide it through the seams. And again, on that tight line rig, you can do so much with it. And I mean, I'll fish big flies on that rig. And the thing is, without like a sinking line, a sinking fly line, or even a floating fly line, without the weight of that fly line, you can do all this stuff on a 4-weight. I don't like to try to do it on a 2-weight. Like a lot of the, let's say, Euro nymphing specialty rods, they aren't my favorite because they're not versatile enough. They're great enough for what they're designed for, Euro nymphing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to take those rods, and I've tried. I'm not going to take an 11-foot 2-weight and throw, a Strolls headbanger on it. Not that it can't, but things are just flopping around too much for me, So I like a 4-weight, 10-foot usually.
Uh-huh.
And people are sometimes surprised. They're like, wow, what are you doing throwing, a 5-inch fly and then another one accompanying it, on a 4-weight. But once they try it, they go, oh, yeah. Well, because it's really the fly line that weighs so much, not our leaders, and that fly line weighs more than the headbanger does. If you're talking about 10 or 12 or 20 feet, I don't know, of a fly line. So, yeah. And it's not that I never fish fly line either. I mean, again, from the boat, I'll sometimes put a sinking line on and stuff like that. I like to do a lot of stuff, but that crossover idea is really, honestly, it's like the thing I'm working on the most these days. I feel like I could tight line nymph pretty well, and I've done the gallop thing and a lot of other streamer ways. But when I go out, I wasn't doing it this morning, but a couple days ago, when I go out and I have a few hours and the right water type and all that, and I'm in the right mood, I really work on that crossover technique. It's different. It's fun.
It's different. Well, and on the again, maybe you can just take it. Somebody that doesn't know anything about mono rigs, they've just got a basic fly line. Can you just describe what, again, the mono rig and do you have a fly? What line do you have attached? You can just go in the basics, how long the leader is, and kind of just for somebody brand new.
Sure thing. Let's say it's 35 feet, 30 to 35 feet. It doesn't have to be that long, but my idea is to keep the transition, let's say the nail knot, out of the guide. The
Gotcha.
loop to loop.
Okay.
I hate,
So it's
I
all
hate that anyway.
So you got a 35 foot, basically leader, and then you've got a fly line down there, but it's just it's weight. And what line is it that's down there?
The fly line, you mean?
Yeah, or does it matter?
Nah. No, I keep a regular fly line. Let's say I got that 4-weight, and I'll keep a 4-weight, dry a regular fly line.
Yeah,
on
just
the
wait,
on the
double
spool.
tape or wait for it, doesn't really matter.
Yeah, sure. And so that I can pull off the mono rig, roll it up, put it in my vest, bring out usually a George Harvey dry fly leader, and get back to dries. Or,
Gotcha.
So that's, a lot of people get in touch. Well, hey, should I just spool the whole reel with mono?
Yeah.
No, don't do that.
No, don't do that. That makes sense.
Or some guys could just go straight to backing.
Yeah.
Why limit yourself? It's the versatility that is so much fun about the fly rod. And anyway, all right, so let's say it's 25 to 35 feet. And again, if you're just nymphing, you don't need that length. If you don't want to, just put an 18-foot leader. Hell, even like a 15-foot leader. And then you'd only have a little bit of fly line out of the guides if you were nymphing. But anyway, you asked me about the streamer rig. So the main reason that I like it, let's say 35 feet in total, is so that I don't have that nail knot in the guide very, very often. Like, again, targeted approach, that kind of thing. I'm not usually fishing beyond 35 feet. So, I can go to 40 feet and still have just a little bit of fly line out off my reel. Anyway, so it's all about the butt section. Yeah, there are three main things that make any tight line rig really work. The main principle is taking fly line out of the game and replacing it with a butt section. In my case, my preferred butt section is 20-pound Maxima Chameleon. There's plenty of other, good choices.
Yeah.
But I like that. Like, you can go thinner, but as soon as you go thinner, well, once you get below like 15-pound, let's say, you start to do more lobbing than casting. And the main thing that people are often surprised about with the mono rig, and again, like 95% of my clients that come to me these days are all about, learning mono rig stuff. The thing people are often surprised about is that it's casting more than lobbing. If you ask me the best way to learn to throw these tight line rigs, whether it's streamers or nymphs, I always tell people learn to cast dries, because it's that 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, the hard the good acceleration between 10 and 2, and the nice crisp hard stops at 10 and 2, that for me makes my casting style anyway, makes it work. And so that's again why I like a 20-pound butt section as opposed to a 10-pound butt section. I got a 10-pound butt section in my vest right now because I like to change out to it and experiment and try stuff, but it doesn't perform that fly line style casting nearly as much as that 20-pound does. Now, the 20-pound sags a little bit more, but not much. But let's say you got to realize it sags a whole lot less than a fly line does out of the guides. It weighs a quarter. 20-pound chameleon, 10 feet of 20-pound chameleon weighs a quarter of what 10 feet of a 4-weight fly line does.
There you go.
So it sags a quarter of it as much, and it's
yeah. So that's it. And you are casting the mono, the basically the leader. You're essentially casting a leader.
Absolutely. And that's what people are surprised by.
That is, because that's a question. I can't remember who said it recently, but we were talking about casting, and we were actually talking about the mono. We got I think it was Rich Strolls. Yeah, because he went on a rant. We were joking about it because I was like, Rich, you got to give me a rant. Somebody said you're awesome at rants, but he talked about he talked about how he was like, people come and they don't even want to learn to cast or fly. And I was like, so what does make a fly fishing? What is it when you're fly fishing? And I said, well, you kind of have to be casting. If you're not casting, then I'm not sure it's fly fishing. But that's the thing. So even though you don't use a fly line necessarily with this mono rig, you're still casting.
Yeah. It's not a chuck and duck rig. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that either, but chuck and duck rigs are lobbing. And yeah, it's not lobbing, it's casting. And the reason being because it's for me, it's that casting. That's where you get your accuracy. And not just fly placement, but the accuracy about now, where does the tippet go? Speaking of nymphing, especially right now, one of the most important things to realize is where the nymph goes in, that's great. Okay, you put it right where you want it. Where's the nymph going to go? The nymph's going to go where the tippet goes, or where the tippet goes next. It's attached to the tippet. It has to follow the tippet. So it's even more important where you put that tippet. If you're lobbing, you have much less control over where that tippet is going to be placed. in your cast or during your cast. When you're, let's say what I'm saying, casting 10 and 2, all the good fly line casting concepts, principles, you're still forming fly line style loops, and you can get those loops to unfold. Nymph goes in, the tippet goes in the exact same seam, hopefully, as the nymph, and then everything is lined up. Mm-hmm. Only what has to touch the water touches. Only what has to go underneath the water goes underneath. Everything else stays up. Let's hope it's not windy. But that's why I cast instead of lob.
Gotcha.
You can stand in a parking often when I find somebody who's kind of skeptical of the whole thing, in a parking lot or wherever. Let's say in a parking lot, I'll just strip a bunch of the monorig off, and there's no flies at all on, and just start casting it. And you could see, I mean, again, with good fly line casting principles, you're seeing fly line loops in that 20-pound Maxima chameleon. Now, I'll point out, you're not going to do that with 6-pound.
No.
6 pounds is just going to collapse on itself. But the 20-pound and things close to that has enough mass that if your casting style is good, you can use that to your benefit. And yeah.
That makes sense. And so again, I'm thinking back, you got this rig set up. It's almost like you're basically nymph fishing just with a streamer on the end. Is that pretty, Could you simplify it and just say that? Yeah,
that's pretty close. When I know I'm going to be streamer fishing for a while, I will put a little thicker sighter on there, and I will go to 2x instead of usually I'm nymphing with 4 or 5x. A lot of that is, well, there's a couple reasons for that. I don't like throwing, again, a Strolls headbanger on 5x. It's a little floppy. And then, of course, when you get it in the trees, you're not getting things out much with 5x. But if you put 2x fluoro on there or 1x fluoro, you can pull out some pretty good.
Yeah.
You can bring some limbs to hand. Yeah. So again, if I know I'm going to be covering a lot of water with bigger flies, I'll simply use like a loon rigging foam I have in my vest right now. I mean, I'll clip my sighter off, a thinner sighter and 4x, 5x that I was just nymphing with. Roll that up on a loon rigging foam, and then just strip right off a little thicker sighter and 2x with 2 streamers ready to go. I can really make the change in like a minute.
Yeah, exactly. I had another question here. This is from John Zellant, and again in the Facebook group. He was wondering if you had any tips for fishing high and muddy water. Let's stay on that. Let's stay on that streamer game.
Yeah. Well, once it's muddy, I don't have any good tips.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm serious. I kind of chuckle when guys, start telling you, well, here's how you fish muddy water, and muddy water is no different. I just don't agree. I mean, I've heard people say, well, they can see it. Those trout can see it. Yeah. If visibility is 6 inches, they could see it 6 inches in front of them. And okay, you don't have to use a bigger fly. Maybe you don't have to change your technique. But boy, muddy just sucks. I hate.
Well, let's take the muddy out and just say fishing high. Let's just say we're just fishing high. Maybe it's not quite muddy, but it's getting there.
Right, and that I very much like. It's so day to day. Streamer fishing, especially, I feel like you can't really force them to do what you want to do. You got to try to figure out what they want to do. Anyway, you got to realize that in higher water, the flows, let's say, are pushing them more. Around all of that structure, I'm always targeting structure when I'm fishing streamers. Around all of that structure, they're going to hold even tighter to it, because when they move over the same distance that they would in, let's say, shallow water, now they're being pushed 2 or 3 times as much. The water is swifter, so it's pushing on them, so they're less willing to move off of that structure. So I'm gonna say it again. I get real targeted. So let's say the water is high enough that I'm not even comfortable wading, and that's been happening around here. A good bit. We've had a pretty wet spring. Mm-hmm. I love it. It's a good spring. I like. I don't know. I like
water.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Fish like water, and I like water. Yeah. So, let's say I'm just walking the bank, actually, or just the edge. I can't hardly get out in the river. Well, instead of trying to, I'm just going to cover a bunch of water here and see what happens, I get, again, real targeted. I'll look from the bank. I'll go, all right, There's a nice log jam, or and that goes right up against a rock. And now I can see this little back swirl or this back eddy, depending on how colored up the water is. That's how much time that would correlate with how much time I'd spend there. I might spend a lot of time in a real juicy spot like that. If there's not another spot like that around, you got to make yourself believe that the fish are there, they are seeing your flies, and then maybe change some things up, presentation wise, but stay close to the structure. If it's clear enough that you don't have to get to the bottom, then don't, because there's probably rocks and stuff that's usually bankside. Now it's underwater, So I often will use lighter flies. I use an unweighted fly that I call a rogue, which I use at night. And that's one of my favorite ways to fish. Well, the style that I was just talking about, kind of going from the bank, being, I'm not casting more than 10, 15, 20 feet away. 20 is probably pushing it even. I really choose my spots. I stay tight to that structure. Let's hope the water is skinny enough there that and clear enough that I'm not trying to get to the bottom. The fish will look up and see it, and maybe I'm only running 6 or 8 or 10 inches deep. That's one way to do it, and then there's 100 others.
Yeah, totally. Hey, Dominic, I'm gonna take us out of here. Had the quick little the 222 top flies, top tips, top resources. And you've mentioned, I think you've kind of mentioned maybe your top flies is other than the headbanger. Is there another one that you would recommend for staying on the streamers?
Yeah, I mean, I have something I call a full pint and then the half pint. Those are they've really become my favorite. I do like circus peanuts. I mentioned those earlier. I have a sculpin that I call a bunny bullet, which is a lot like an old school Chuck sculpin. Those do well for me. That just bugger variations too. Yeah. There's a lot of things that I try. Well, there's a lot of streamers that when I plan on running them deep, that I make sure they're simple, because I don't want to be afraid to lose them.
Yeah, totally. But what about top tip? You've mentioned a few tips. Any other tips you want to throw out there for somebody for talking fishing streamers and kind of the technique we said today?
Yeah, sure. I think about head position of the streamer almost all the time. Yeah. I think trout don't really recognize or care at all about a head position of, let's say, a nymph, even a stonefly. They don't care. They're going to eat a stonefly, whether the stonefly's head is faced downstream or upstream. They don't care. It's because I'm sure stoneflies get tossed around, and it doesn't matter on a nymph. But on a streamer, to me, head position is a big deal. I think trout recognize it. I think they see when that head position is either natural or unnatural. And I will say that if you stand there and swing flies, which is the first way I was taught to fish streamers, get out in the water and cast down and across and then have them swing, or even just cast across and then have them swing and down and across with the tension of the water, keeping the head of the streamer then pointed upstream and toward you. And usually with that tension, the fly is, even a heavier fly, ends up riding like mid-column. That to me, really, in truth, it's not a natural look, because, bait fish don't have the streamers, the bait fish, they don't have the propulsion system really to hold that line, It can very much be attractive. I get it. And in the right water over the right trout, you catch a lot of trout that way. Around here, the fish that I fish for anyway, and even across the state and whatever, the places I fish, I do a lot better when the head position, instead of faced upstream, is faced down, or especially down and across. So let's say I'm standing in the middle of the river again. The water's not too high, but it's coming up. It's on the rise. We're supposed to get a big shot of water here tonight, and I'm looking forward to going out tomorrow and doing exactly this. Get out in the middle of the stream, let's say mid-sized stream, and I will cast up and across, let's say to the bank. That's always a good structure. Mm-hmm. And I will immediately try to get in touch with my fly and get the fly so that the head of the streamer is faced down and across. Let's just say 45 degrees. And then I often will try to hold that line and that angle as long as possible. Maybe give the fly a few jerks, jigs, strips, small movements as it holds that line, holds that structure, that bank as long as possible, also holding that head angle. and I kind of think of it as what I call a slow slide coming off the bank. And then when I'm just kind of getting out of reach, I can't hold that angle anymore. Then I'll do more aggressive things with it, like strip, 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 and then I just cast again.
Gotcha. That's awesome. Maybe just a couple of resources. Anything that maybe isn't your own you'd recommend for anything we haven't talked about here for if people want to go a little deeper?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big George Daniel guy.
Yeah.
Love what George Daniel has put out there through the years. Right now, he's got a good video series out there with some of the stuff he's doing for Penn State. He works for Penn State now.
That's right.
I learned a lot from George.
Is he now the lead? Does he have that position with Penn State? Is he the...
Yeah. Same job. Right. The same thing that George Harvey and Joe Humphries did.
Cool. Yeah, when Joe was on, I remember he mentioned it. That's awesome to hear because I've been out of the loop, but I remember asking George about that when he was on, whether he wanted that position, and that's good to hear he got it.
Yeah. No, I don't think Joe Humphries was making YouTube videos.
No.
Right?
No.
But George is fantastic. And like I say, I learned a lot from him, got to know him when he was the manager of the TCO shop. And we talked a lot. You know what? We talked a lot about night fishing at the time. Yeah, learned a lot from him. Devin Olson's stuff is fantastic. All three videos with him and Lance.
That's
and
right.
Gilbert, Rowley. Those are just artistic videos.
Cool.
You know, those are
good stuff.
There's a lot of great stuff there. And Devin's book, George's books, great stuff.
There is a ton of good resources. That's awesome. Hey, before I let you get out of here, the music. What instrument did you play, or did you play an instrument?
Yeah, sure. I'm looking at my guitar right now.
Oh, guitar. In the
studio. But yeah, my favorite is acoustic guitar. I played a lot of electric guitar because I was in a lot of bands, and I played saxophone. That was the first instrument I picked up when I was in 4th grade. That saxophone really is what probably helped me sort of break into this local music scene, is because everybody was happy to have a saxophone player sitting in, you know. And I could always play by ear. I could read music too, but I could always play by ear, so it was easy to just jump in and blow some solos.
You and AK Best, right? That's what he talked about that when I had him on. The sax.
That's cool. I feel like I read that somewhere.
Yeah. He talked about that quite a bit. That was a really fun chat as well. Hey, would this be asking too much? Could you pick up that guitar and play a little lick to take us out of here?
Yeah, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to tell you why.
Yeah.
First of all, 2 reasons. These are both good excuses.
Yeah, let's hear it.
First of all, I'm all strung up with the wires here. With
that's
the
right.
mic and
that's right.
That's
sure.
Hey, and the other thing is the guitar probably isn't in tune either.
No.
I have not played. I literally have not played since December. I haven't picked it up. Yeah. I kind of got burned out on it.
Yeah.
I played for 17 years and, it became a career.
Yeah.
I love it and I know I'm going to get back to it. My buddy Austin is always, sending me a video of, hey, look at this finger picking technique that I figured out. And I'm like, nice video. He's like, when are you going to start playing again? I will.
I just watched I've almost finished with the country music, Ken Burns. I don't know if you've seen that, but
no, but Ken Burns is great.
Yeah, I mean it's great. It's really awesome. I'm not like I do love country, more old country, Merle Haggard, Johnny Cash, stuff like that. But it's just amazing, right? Just the whole guitar. I mean, not only the guitar, but the mandolin and the all the instruments, right? And you just see the influence that country had. People don't realize the influence on music, and it's not just the pop country you hear today, but it's pretty powerful stuff. So no, I won't. That's good. Thanks for letting me know. I think is there anything we could find? Do you have anything recorded out there online anywhere where we can listen to something?
Yeah, I do, but I actually took the website down.
Oh, you did? Okay. Well, I'll let you off the hook here. So yeah, I guess in the next few months, anything else we can look out for you, or you want to kind of give a shout out here?
Yeah, I mean, there's Troutbitten is really, like I said, it became my career back in 2017. I played the last gig. So I got out of music and I played my last gig back in December, and that's like I say, I haven't picked up a guitar since.
So, right, Dominic, Troutbitten.com is the best place to go to find more information. And anything else before we let you get out of here? You wanna give a shout out here?
No, man, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, Dave. And there's 600 articles on Troutbitten. You'll find something that you like if you're a trout fisherman with a fly rod.
So there you go. If you want to find all the show notes with all links we covered, just go to wetflyswing.com/140. A quick reminder about the new podcast, Outdoors Online, the marketing podcast that can help you grow your brand online. I'm interviewing some of the biggest internet marketers on the planet to share what's working now in social media and internet marketing. Head head over to Outdoors, that's Outdoors with an S, online.co, and have a listen. Or you can just take a look in the show notes. We'll have a link out there. It'd be great if you could share that. If you haven't listened to it, take a quick listen, and if you can, share it with somebody you think it might help. Thanks again for stopping by today to check out the show. I'm definitely looking forward to catching up with you soon. Hope to maybe see you on the river or online.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com. And if you found this episode helpful, please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes.